Bryan and Shannon, we meet again.
It's 5 years later.
Last time I spoke to you, it was just before the pandemic hit, and life was very different back then. And yours has changed as well to the point where you now have a documentary about your lives. So let's just start by unpacking this documentary and what it's about.
Sure. Well, first off, thank you for having us, and we're really happy to be here. And a lot has gone under the bridge, water-wise, since that time. So the documentary is connected to Owner, which is a nonprofit that Shannon and I started. And it's for business owners. And we are working really hard to serve business owners with meaningful content that will help them as they hopefully scale their business of whatever size, and then teach them like principles that we learned along the way, a professional principle and a personal principle that we've, either struggled through or learn through someone else's wisdom or through our experience. And we found like most of the times business owners are very lonely and isolated people, and we want to create a safe harbor for them. And that's why we, after our experience and some success that we've enjoyed, we want to make sure that we're giving back, because our heart is to mentor, and this is a really great way to mentor business owners.
When you first came up with the idea for this nonprofit, I'll have to imagine some people said, hey, why are you doing this? You just sold one company for like $110 million. I think that's public, so we can say it. Yeah. And you have another company, it's called the Nofo Brew Company. Yeah. So you're doing well, you have another venture, and then you're like, you know what, a nonprofit. So did you get any pushback in regards to that from your friends, peers, anyone like that?
It's funny, we actually tried to do this when we last saw you.
Okay.
We were doing this new company called Own Not Run, and it was the whole idea of teaching and coaching business owners how to get out of the day-to-day of their business and own their business and not run it. And then the pandemic happened, right? And the idea of, just, find somebody else to kind of run your company, and here's all the strategies to do that. It was tone deaf, and it wasn't the right time. So we paused that, and then eventually just said, we can't quite figure out how to make this work until last year. And Brian's like, what? Because the desire to help people didn't go away, but the idea that it would be a for-profit business just didn't make sense for where we were. So last year, Brian was like, hey, why don't we make Own Not Run something different and make it a nonprofit? And we're, entering second half of life. I'm in my late 40s, Brian just turned 50, and it's like, we're looking at legacy, and telling our story through the documentary and the docuseries that we're doing that has those principles you mentioned, and just creating this nonprofit is part of that legacy. But yeah, a lot of people are like, why a nonprofit? You guys are business people, this would make a lot of sense to be for profit. We just wanted to be able to give and not expect anything in return.
So in the documentary, I'm guessing there's a lot of behind the scenes footage of you going throughout your day. And I'm wondering, as a married couple, what do you talk about at dinner? Is it like, hey, it needs more seasoning, or hey, how can we do another M&A? What is that like? How do you find a way to separate business from the personal side?
We've just decided that we'll blend it all together. We don't really have rules around we'll talk about business during business hours or whatever. We just, if something needs to be talked about, we talk about it, and we're passionate about the things we've created, right? So it's natural for us to talk about it. There are some times when we've had maybe a stressful week or a day, and we're like, hey, I don't want to talk about work anymore.
Yeah.
I'm done, But I think we've just said, hey, when we need to talk about it, we just need to get it out there and talk about it both ways, for whatever we're experiencing.
And that includes, meals with our kids too, because they've grown up with, they were 2 and 5 when we started BELAY. Okay. And BELAY is an all virtual company, so we built this business from our home. And so that separation, like Brian said, that was never there. And so the kids will ask us, hey, what's going on with Nofo? What's happening? What's this other business trip that you guys have going on? And it's, for us, that level of integration just feels true to who we are.
Yeah, our kids have got MBAs just by living in our house. Yeah. They really have. They've seen us struggle, and we started BELAY when they were 2 and 5, so they've literally watched our trajectory and where we came from, and it's kind of neat to do it with them.
Yeah, my kids are all under 9, but I'm seeing that future for them as well. But let's dig a little deeper, because we can talk about tactics, but I want to get into mindset as well, because I found that success is a habit. That's why a lot of successful people, they can do, one venture and it goes well. They can start like scuba diving. They're great at that too. Like they just can't lose. So I'm wondering, is there a common mindset or approach towards business that's allowed you to launch these 3 successful ventures? Like what is it that makes you tick that allows you to just find success in all these different ventures?
Well, I think the common theme or the through line through these organizations is we've chosen not to run them. We have really great leaders that run these organizations for us. Even with our nonprofit, for example, we are technically the founders, but we will be putting an executive director in place to run the run the nonprofit when we get up and running. And then our brewery, from day one, we said, hey, we're going to appoint a CEO to run this business, and then resource and equip them and get out of their way. And then with BELAY, we were the leaders early on, but even before we sold the majority of it, we had appointed a CEO 18 months before the transaction. So we've always, I just believe that big things take more than you, right? And so you got to find really great people and resource and equip them and get out of their way. And I think that that's something that we've done really well, regardless of size of organization or type of organization, is just attract good leaders and then pour into them.
I think that's a problem a lot of corporations have, though, is like they want to hire the right people, but then especially even remote workers, but then micromanaging, hey, I got to see your timesheet. It's bro, look at my results, right? So it's how did you come to the conclusion at BELAY where you're look, we got to step back because otherwise maybe it's going to interfere with your quality of life or just the way the company's run, but what made you decide hey, we have to take a step back from actually running the company?
You can kind of feel friction when you have high caliber team members with responsibilities and then you micromanage. There's friction there, right? If they're hired to do a great job, then setting those expectations, measuring the results, and letting them do what they're great at without punching a clock, right, is the type of work that is rewarding. That's the environment that we want to create. And we got to the point, I think, with BELAY too, we were growing so fast. Our growth rate was ridiculous for a long time until we kind of hit critical mass, and then it was a little bit more predictable, but we had no choice but to rely on our exceptional team members and just, if there was a gap in an expectation, maybe something wasn't met, always just address it and fill that gap with trust instead of suspicion. That's a mindset that was really helpful for us, especially in the earlier days as we were kind of forming those relationships.
Yeah, I like that. Just assuming positive intent. If someone messed up, I'm using air quotes, assuming, okay, wait a second, there might be another reason why this happened. But what I'm curious though is how do you screen for that initially? Because when I worked in corporate, I was really good at interviews. Maybe not the best worker in the world. So how do you screen for that so you don't get surprised 2 months later when you realize, wow, this is not the person that we thought it was?
Well, I think a way you could ask that is, hey, tell us a time when someone did something to you and how did you react to it? And just sit back and listen to them and see if they mentioned trust or they gave the benefit of the doubt. I think that's a really quick way of, seeing how a person will operate. For us, trust versus suspicion is a really big deal, right? We've all worked in organizations where it's full of suspicious people and the culture stinks, right? And so we've just tried, and when we've looked for people, we have what we call core convictions. We don't call them core values. We call them core convictions because we're convicted by these things. And then we kind of ask questions around those convictions. And one of those might be, a conviction for an organization might be trust or how to extend trust. But you just kind of layer those in and you ask open-ended questions connected to your core convictions. That's how we've interviewed people for years.
Mm-hmm. And we're huge on promoting from within too. So giving somebody an opportunity that, is more entry level in some ways, with the idea of if this goes well, then there's future growth. And I think that's helped too, because when we've hired in at a really high level, that's a big risk, that's and doesn't always, that integration doesn't always happen quickly.
So from BELAY, you went on to launch Nofo, as well as owner, obviously. And I was just curious, beyond just knowing how to hire the right people, what other transferable lessons or skills did you pick up running BELAY that have helped you in your other ventures?
There's a couple. The first one that comes to mind is when you have leaders or people in your organization, we've always said you want to delegate the result, not the task. Mm-hmm. So instead of saying, here's the 15 things you have to do and it's task, it's say, no, here's the result I'm looking for. And I trust you to figure out how to get to the result. oftentimes leaders don't do that. They want to say, this is my way of doing it, and here's the task, and this is the thing you need to do, versus saying, no, the result is here. And you actually might get there quicker by doing something, but ultimately this is what the result is, and be super clear about the result. And leaders would do a good job if they would just say, hey, this is what I'm looking for in the result, and allowing them the freedom with the task.
Have you tried that with your kids before?
Yeah, a little bit here and there. But I mean, they're old enough too. Our daughter's in college now.
Okay,
Our son's in high school.
Yeah.
So it is a little bit more, this is what's expected with the result. But I found that most people that you work with are grown-ups, and they want that responsibility, right? They want to step into something like that, and they want the result. And the other thing too, the second thing I was just thinking about, is that it's our job as leaders, it's incumbent on us to communicate the why over the what. This is why this is important, or this is why this meeting is important, or hey, the thing that you're doing is so important and this is why. And then if they know the why, when you're not around, they can fill in the blank with the what, the how, the when. But they need to know the why for why we're doing certain things, or you're asking them to go do in this task or whatever.
So there was a answer that I was thinking of for the mindset thing that can kind of play into this question too, because it's transferable from how we approach life with our kids and our businesses, and it's the principle of expansion. So, I mentioned BELAY grew very quickly, so is NoFo. Our kids grow fast, like life's just moving fast, and we're expanding all the time. We're learning, we're creating new relationships, and through that expansion, you gain power. You're gaining more influence. You might have more money. You might have more resources available to you. There's power that's gained through expansion, and then you as an individual have a choice. What do you do with that power? Do you use it for your own benefit? Do you keep building your kingdom? Do you give it away for the sake of others? And that's our mindset, and that's why we're starting Owner. And we're teaching our kids this too, because life's not always about what we can consume. That's very limiting. So if we can expand, gain power, and give it away for the sake of others, and then repeat it, you just continue to get more expansion and more power and more opportunities to help others. And
we hope the business owners see that and do that as well. And they see that the thing that they've been given that's beautiful through their expansion or through the risk or whatever, and the power they got, they do that. They give it away for the sake of others.
Yeah, you're starting that ripple effect, and I can appreciate that. But I want to talk about fear for a minute, because often we suffer or go through identity foreclosure, like as adults, right? So it's like, I am an accountant, I am, an engineer, I am the owner of BELAY. And for you to, by design, take that identity away must have been challenging. So can you just share like some of the fears or some of the apprehensions you had in regards to making the sale, and then how you got over it on the other side? Because a lot of people listening, maybe they're not about to sell their company, but they're about to quit their job, right? They're about to start a new business. They're about to make some big shift. But there's fear around that. And obviously, we heard it before, like everything you want is on the other side of fear, so on and so forth. But can you just kind of coach us through that by sharing your story, how you pushed through that?
Yeah, we have, I think, somewhat similar approaches to this, but I think we handled it different, each of us, when it came to the transaction. But one of the things that we had decided back in like 2018 was a list of 5 things that we knew that would grow our business to a point that we could sell. We call them value accelerators, and one of those were that we would become unnecessary to the company. That its most valuable part, if we can make it as valuable as possible, it'd be that we were unnecessary. Because we were, the founders and the CEOs at that point, we were co-CEOs. And so it was about then that I just started to divorce my identity with the business, right? It's like, okay, I am this, and I'm stewarding this for a season of time. I'm responsible for this for a season of time with Shannon. But one day, this won't be our business. One day this will be someone else's steward. So the mindset happened in us that no, we're just managing this. We're stewarding this asset for our family right now. And so it was a way for us to kind of uncouple the situation with being who our identity was with the business. With no, this is an asset, and we're going to steward it as best we can. We're going to grow it the best we can. We're going to find a great CEO that's going to run it. And that's essentially what we did. But for me personally, I just had to remind myself, I'm stewarding this for a season at a time.
I remember feeling really afraid of like irrelevance, Like I took so much pride in my role as co-CEO at BELAY, and just so proud of what we had built and the team. I really loved leading. And we had NoFo. There was some overlap there, but my level of engagement with NoFo was different than building BELAY from the ground up, all in. So I had a lot of fear of like, well, if I'm not the CEO or I'm not the chair, like, who am I? Like, where is anybody going to care about what I'm doing? And I kind of, honestly, that through that expansion and the gaining power, I just went into a hole, and not a deep depression or anything like that. I don't want to be dramatic, but like, I didn't know how I wanted to show up in the world anymore after that. So I just took some time to really do a lot of deep work and soul searching and a lot of internal development and formation, and that's how I addressed my fear, because I had to kind of break that identity and get back to the root of who I am, regardless of my role at any organization or who I'm leading, like the core of who I am as a person. That's what I used that season of time to, between like the sale in 21 to really saying yes to starting Owner and getting back out there again and doing things like this.
It's amazing how you just said earlier, like, you delegate the outcome, not the task. Yeah. You both took different approaches to getting the same outcome, which is being okay with selling, but like totally different approaches.
Brian's very pragmatic.
Yeah. No, that's telling. But what I'm curious though is like, BELAY, I get, Owner, I get. But when you brought up NoFo, people were like, what the heck? Like, what? Like, what was that response like? Like, where'd the idea come from? What was the response like? And just in general, can you give us more details?
Well, I mean, we do love business, but we had a friend that approached us and said, hey, I want you to look at this business model. There's an opportunity for us in Georgia because the laws were changing in the state at the time around crap brew. And we looked at it closely and we said, okay, well, if you want to run the business, as a CEO, then we, as investors, will basically fund the effort, and you'll have sweat equity, and we'll basically be the backstop for you. And so even before we sold BELAY, we started NoFo Brewco in 2019. So 2 years before we sold BELAY, and for us at least, we didn't anticipate the growth that we'd see, and we have 3 taproom locations in Atlanta, in the Georgia area. And then we have operations in England and Ireland as well. And so we're opening up fronts internationally because it's a brand. We're now a distillery as well, so we do spirits too. And the passion there for us is around the communities that we're involved in. I believe this all my heart. The world doesn't need another brewery. It just doesn't. What it needs is a place where people can have meaningful connection. And we've done that really, really well, and we've figured out a way to do that now in Walsall, England, and also in Drogheda, Ireland as well. And I'm really proud of that because a brewery is really the intersection of life. There's people there that are coming because they're celebrating something, or they're upset about something, or they got the new job, or they lost the job, or whatever. And it's a beautiful place for community. And we want to we have a great team that serves them well in that, but we wanted something that was a little bit more tangible. We had BELAY, which is all virtual services, right? And so this is very much a manifestation of something that was more tangible, because from our experiences that we've had.
So from NoFo, in the community that you mentioned there, we were like, we still got to do this Owner thing. Was that like, did that encourage you, like once you saw the success with NoFo, were you like, we got to get back to Owner because again, it's all centered around community, or what was that process like?
I don't know. I think, NoFo really is run and led with an amazing team that we have the privilege of coming in for leadership meetings or culture days, or we did like a financial literacy thing for it's a lot of younger people, and we wanted to kind of pour into them from that perspective. So anyway, so our involvement in NoFo from a time perspective kind of varies with what's going on. But, the idea for Owner really has been born out of our deep desire to help business owners. And we've mentored over the years, and that can be, at least the approach that we took was very intensive, 1 to 4, 1 to 7, whatever. And so it's like, how do you create, a platform or an environment where we can reach many people? So the timing of, still having NoFo and investing and having fun with that business and launching Owner, the timing of it just didn't seem to didn't seem to bother us. Now, I will say, we're not starting anything else right now.
Okay. Well, can we get an update on that like 6 months?
We have we are starting an event business, but that was kind of an accident. Like we bought an event center literally like in our backyard in Georgia, and we renovated it and we're creating an event business. But after that,
I was gonna say, any other accidents that we should plan for, or are we good?
Well, we do invest in soccer teams. I don't know if we've talked about that yet or not, but Shannon and I are co-investors in 4 soccer teams, 3 in Europe and 1 in Africa, through an investing group in Birmingham, Alabama. And we're friends with the co-founder and the managing director, and so we poured some of our money into that with them from an investing standpoint. So there's 11 core investors that help out and with the endeavors of these teams. So there's nothing about that we're directly running, like we're focused our time and energy on owner.
Do people feel boring around you too? Because like you have all these cool stories, and I'm like, I like CrossFit. Like how's?
Not at all.
No, it was like, oh, please don't ask me about hobbies. Don't ask me about hobbies.
I was gonna, that actually is question number 1. But well, do you have hobbies that you two enjoy together that we might be surprised to hear? Because again, like people listening might think you're just watching like the news all day and like stock market and all this stuff. Like
No, we love to travel. Yeah, we always have. Like when we first met, I met Bryan when I was 17. You were what, 19?
Yeah.
And part of our story was he's like, hey, I want to travel the world with you. I was like, where do I sign? Let's go. And so that I would say is like the hobby that we enjoy most.
That was
together.
my best sales pitch.
there you go. Yeah, nailed it. Yeah.
But when we're home, we love just hiking, and I like gardening and just slower pace of things to kind of balance out the intensity of the business adventures that we have.
We've got 2 great kids that we're trying to steward, and be a good mom and dad too. So there's time spent there, in different ways now because we're more coaches to them than anything else at this point. And so, we're pretty chill when we're home.
I don't think people are boring though. Honestly, like if you think about it, like. And that was part of my sort of, after the sale of BELAY, like who do I want to be and show up in the world? Because I was like, how do I relate to people now? Like this major life event happened, and it's hard to explain to somebody who hasn't experienced it, all the feels that you have from it. And so I came to the realization, like you can connect with anybody on anything. It doesn't matter. So there's nobody that I've found in my life that's just like, just so boring. Like if you dig enough and you ask enough open-ended questions, you can find points of connection anywhere.
I'll try not to ruin your streak. But you talked about time and having more time for your kids, which I think is obviously important for any parent. But for me, like AI has given me a lot more time back with my kids. And along those lines, I'm wondering, like, what aha moments have you had with AI recently? Where you're like, man, if we had that when I started BELAY, like, what are some of those bigger moments that you've experienced?
Well, you talk about BELAY, right now I'm still on the board, and we as a whole organization, we talk about how can our folks remain AI enabled. It's about how you leverage AI. And I think that's true in our lives personally. I don't think we're replaceable as humans, but I do think that there's certain things we can leverage and be smart about. I've learned things from our employees that teach us things about how to, work with AI better. Or I'm like, oh, I didn't realize you could ask it that thing. It's been really helpful and very beneficial.
How has it given you more time with your kids? I'm curious.
Everything from social media content to writing pitch decks to even reviewing pitch decks, because one thing I'll do is like if I send a pitch deck to someone before I do it, I'll run it through AI and I'll say, give me 3 reasons they would say no and what I should say to make them say yes. So little things like that. And I can do that while my kids are like fighting in the other room. So it's like, all right, Dad's almost done. Give me another minute here.
I always feel like I'm going to break ChatGPT when I see it just sitting there for a second. I'm like, no, I'm not that smart. I didn't break anything. It's just trying to think it through,
Yeah, well, you just asked a really good question. Yeah. But along those lines, I mean, how do you balance like AI-driven insights and strategies with your own just like intuition? Because some people, you can tell they just let the computers take over. Like night and day, all of a sudden they change like their personality, their offering and everything. So how do you leverage AI, but like just lead with like natural intelligence besides letting this artificial intelligence take over?
When I was thinking of like certain exercises that we have as part of the guidebook for owner. So we've got the documentary, docuseries, and every season has a guidebook that walks the business owner through different exercises. And if I would get stumped, I would throw my heart into a question of like, what's a physical activity that a business owner could do that would help them make a connection between trust and what they've felt about people like their whole lives. That's a terrible example. I butchered it, but you get the sentiment of like,
Along those lines, yeah.
yeah, you're trying to come up with something creative, but the heart of what you're trying to do with that information is still there.
Yeah, I think as long as you lead with, like, again, like natural curiosity, like you'll be in a good spot. But if you're like, tell me how to live my life, it's like, dude, like you should probably not do that.
Yeah, and then you get the output and then you change it and make it your own.
Yeah, you gotta have those tweaks. So I'm gonna ask you one more question. It's either gonna be very easy or very difficult. We'll see what happens. But you've done a lot of interviews, like obviously over the years, and you've been asked a lot of questions. But I'm wondering, what is one question? This is going to be both of you are going to ask you to answer, please. What is one question that almost nobody ever asks you, but they should because your response would be so valuable?
That's a great question. You go first.
I would do that to my wife as well.
Oh, thanks, honey.
Ladies first, you got it.
I would ask me, how does your faith inform your decisions? I don't get asked about my faith a whole lot. And I know faith can be, and it is a very personal thing and can be a hot button topic sometimes, but I think most of us have faith in something. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, my faith is extremely important because it is the reason that I think generosity and serving other people is really important. It's that third component of the principle of expansion, right, of giving it away for the sake of others because of what I've seen modeled in my faith. So that would be my answer.
I'm glad we asked.
Thank you.
Please don't steal her answer.
Thanks for letting me go first.
Yeah, well done. I would say that I would like if someone asked me like, hey, how do I look at my business as an asset? And if one day I want to sell this business, how would I go about doing that right now? It might be a 10-year thing or a 15-year thing, but how have you done that? And one of the things I give business owners encouragement to do is go talk to brokers or investment bankers that have sold your business or your type of business and ask them, when a business like mine goes to market and it does really well and it sells for a lot of money, what was it? What were the 4 or 5 things that they did? And most investment bankers or brokers will say, it was this, 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 and this. Mm-hmm. And that should be your playbook. If you want to sell your business one day, that's what you should go do. That is literally the playbook, because these guys sell this stuff all the time. And we've, in instances where I know folks have done that, it's served them really well because, there are changes in markets and changes in industries that, will affect a business over, say, a 10-year period. But the principles are there that are very important for that particular industry. And you can just go ask the people that sell it for great value what they are. And they'll tell you, over lunch or Zooms or whatever. So that's what I wish more people would ask that. And I love asking them and kind of, bringing their attention to, why do you have this asset, this business? What is this for? What's your intent with this?
Yeah, success leaves clues. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can just ask these questions in a good spot. But Shannon, I have one more question for you as we're wrapping this up. It's going to be a surprise here. But so imagine someone joins Owner after listening to this, and you run into them on the street here in New York City on Broadway a year from now. Mm-hmm. What would you want them to say to you in regards to their experience with Owner to make you feel like, you know what, mission accomplished?
I would want them to say something like, I came across Owner at a time where I was really struggling in my business, and through what I learned and experienced, it's changed the trajectory of my life. I think that would be a huge win.
All right, well, I think you're about a year away from that happening.
Thank you. I hope so, that's my prayer.
Well, thank you both for your time today. This has been great, and thanks for answering those questions that nobody ever asks. But it's been valuable for me and our audience as well, so I appreciate you.
Thanks,
Thank you very much.